Welcome back to the channel. Racer X here, and today I'm back with my good buddies at Stingray Chevrolet in Plant City, Florida, because they have got a really cool car that I want to take a look at and compare to my Demon 170. Two completely different cars from different worlds, different engineering, but it's still really fun to actually compare these two cars side by side, talk about all the differences, because when it comes to price, they're actually pretty similar, and we'll talk about that today. So if you guys are brand new to the channel, don't forget, hit subscribe. You can find that right over here in the corner, and off we go.
T-minus 15 seconds.
And directly behind me, I have the two cars that I wanted to compare for you today. That is my 2023 Demon 170, an absolute monster of a car, 1,025 horsepower. And right here, I have Chevy's iconic Z06, a monster of a car in itself, and a really interesting comparison to the Demon 170. Just look at the size comparison between the Demon 170 and the Corvette Z06. You realize just how much lower the Corvette sits. You realize that when you sit in these two cars as well, but man, the Challenger looks like an absolute monster sitting next to the Corvette. This is distinctly a Z06, and I have been waiting for literally years to get a hold of one of these cars. They are both very exclusive and very hard to get, and you say, well, why in the world would you compare those two cars? Because they are in fact so different. You've got a drag race monster in the Demon 170, and you've got a road course monster in the Corvette C8 Z06. Well, from a sticker price perspective, my Demon came in right around $118,000. Now, we're not talking about all the crazy markups that happen really on both of these two cars. And the Z06, this is a non-Z07 package Z06, but an amazing car. Starts out around 114, and then, you know, you can have these things go all the way up to like the 170s. They've got one inside that is literally $170,000 all spec'd out. And in the Demon, you can spec these out all the way up to like $140,000, $150,000 if you really deck it out with a special paint package, all that kind of stuff. And as I mentioned, both of these cars, you saw massive markups on both of these two, but it is really interesting from a price point perspective to talk about both of these two cars. For those of you that have been following my channel for quite a while, you may have seen some of my other videos where I talk about what an incredible torque monster this Demon is. And even though it has those big old 315 Mickey Thompsons in the back, on the street, it can absolutely send those up whenever it wants to. It makes so much power and so much torque, and it really takes a lot of driver skill to get really any amount of that power planted. It doesn't really matter how you set it up. I've done the 0 to 60 test. You guys have seen it, and it's just a lot of power to handle. And we talk about the Corvette, 2.6 seconds 0 to 60, and those big 345s really help to get this thing planted to the ground. And the way that it makes the torque, right? I mean, it's naturally aspirated, so you kind of wind this thing all the way out to 8,500. It actually stays pretty planted to the ground, and it feels very controllable to drive this car. Two very, very different driving experiences indeed. You can see this car is a purpose-built drag car. You can see those big old 17-inch 315 Mickey Thompsons back there. This thing is made to go really fast in a straight line. 6.2-liter supercharged Hemi V8, making 1,025 horsepower, 945 pound-feet of torque. And then over here in the Z06, this is more of a road course-inspired car. You can see just how low this car sits. It's much smaller, right? You got about 4,300 some odd pounds in the Demon. This car comes in right around 3,660 pounds, so about a 700-pound weight difference between these two cars. This is a two-seater. Obviously, you have a back seat in the Demon, and of course, the engine on the Z06 is right back here. And this is the rock star of this car, a hand-built 5.5-liter flat plane crank, naturally aspirated V8 engine. This is one of the most powerful, naturally aspirated production V8 engines that you can buy, and it sounds absolutely glorious. It literally sounds like something in a Ferrari. Maybe you would expect that sound from a Lamborghini or something exotic from Europe. Definitely not something you would hear an American sports car sound like, but it definitely does. The cold start on this car is absolutely insane. 460 pound-feet of torque, So it actually makes half the amount of torque that that monster of a Demon makes over there, but it absolutely screams 8,500 RPM this thing winds out to, where in the Demon over here, you're somewhere around 6,400 RPM. A couple other quick points on the Z06. This is actually a wider car than a standard C8 Corvette, and you don't really notice it when it's off by itself, but when you see the two sitting next to each other, you can definitely tell that the Z06 is wider, and this opening right here is definitely bigger. You have to be able to have a lot of airflow to that monster 5.5 liter flat plane crank V8 screaming at 8,500 RPM behind your head. And when you talk about the wheels, you get 275/20s up front from Michelin, and then when you get back here to the rear, the wheels on the Z06, they're big. It's a 21-inch wheel, 345 in width from Michelin, and it is a monster of a wheel. So this car actually grabs the road quite nicely. For comparison, you can see what the inside of the Demon looks like. I'll just give you a quick look here. You can see the suede steering wheel right here, bits of carbon fiber right here in the middle. I do have the cloth seats in here, at least for now. That's going to change here very soon, guys, so just wait for that. But you can see it is a little bit of a driver-centric position in this car, but it is very big and very open. And by contrast, on the Corvette, well, let's walk over there. Lots of carbon fiber in this car. I love the carbon fiber steering wheel here. Beautiful two-tone seats in this car. As I mentioned, this is only a two-seater, but you get a really nice digital display right here. It really feels like it has a much smaller dash, and this car really wraps around you. It feels like an extension of you when you're driving it. It's a very, very enjoyable driving experience in this car, and it actually feels really firm when you sit down in this car. And take a look at the door here as well. A lot more carbon fiber. You can see the beautiful Bose sound system right here. Two-tone pops. Really nice place to sit and do business in this car, and the roof comes off of this if you're feeling sporty as well. Take a look at the trunk space in the Demon 170. I didn't even have carpet put in this car. I mean, this thing was all about going fast at the drag strip. And even though they've cut some weight out of the Demon 170, as I mentioned, it's a lot heavier than the Corvette and much, much larger. And you get over here to the back of the Corvette, and you do get a little bit of a trunk space back here behind that beautiful hand-built engine like we just talked about. You can even see the engine builder's name right there. And I do like the carbon fiber bits they have right up top here as well. There's a lot of carbon fiber on this car. And then when you step around to this side, of course, you do get a little frunk right here. As with most mid-engine cars, you get a little storage spot in the front of this car for, say, like a bowling ball or a helmet or whatever you'd want. Not a lot, but it is there. I didn't want to gloss over this, but on the Z06, you get big 6-piston Brembos that are very, very aggressive, which allow this car to really, really corner hard, say, in a road course application. On the Demon, a completely different deal altogether. You get smaller 4-piston Brembos, and they're much lighter than you would get, say, on like a Red-Eye Hellcat. They were trying to save weight on the front of this car for weight transfer because, as I mentioned, this one is really made for drag racing. Big old 6-piston Brembos for road course racing. I want to show you the different profiles of the exhausts on these two cars. Obviously, you've got a spoiler right here on the Demon. It's an extended SRT spoiler. You'll see that on the Hellcats and other trims as well. And just take a look at that beautiful X-Mod system from MagnaFlow that I have on the back of this Demon. And yeah, it sounds really nice and aggressive. And as you get over here behind the Corvette, you will notice it has center exhaust. Yes, the regular C8 does not have center exhaust, and that's how you can tell from the back that you're actually looking at a Z06, because it'll have the center exhaust instead of the exhaust out here on the side of the car. So definitely something to consider there. Let's actually listen to a quick cold start. Now, many of you that have been following my channel for a really long time realized that I had a deposit down on a C8 Z06. Initially, it was for a regular C8, then COVID happened. And for like 2 years, I had a deposit down to be one of the first people to have one of these C8 Z06s. I was incredibly excited about it. This is before we even knew really what the car was. And then the dealership came back. I talked all about this previously on my channel. And they said I had to donate $50,000 to a charity of their choice, or they refused to sell me a Z06, a huge blow. And it was really going to be my flagship car for the channel. I was so excited about this, and I just had my deposit sitting out there waiting in the wings, only to be told that, you know what, It's just not going to happen. I'm not going to do that. I don't have 50 grand just laying around to donate to charity, and I just wasn't in the game on this car. And finally, after all this time, I get the Z06 in the flesh and get to drive it. So with that being said, let's take it down the road. I am now aboard the 2023 Corvette Z06, and man, I absolutely love this cockpit feel in this car. It feels like night and day when you get in this car and get in a Challenger, but this car absolutely wraps around you to the fullest extent. You'll have to kind of go sit in one to see what I mean by that, but it really does wrap around you, and you can see all the carbon fiber in this car. It's got carbon fiber everywhere. The dash actually sits kind of almost close to you. You got the center section just basically wrapping. Everything wraps all the way around you in this car to a beautiful cockpitted, beautiful digital display. And I want to take this thing down the road because the true rock star of the Z06 is sitting directly behind me. So let's see what this thing can do. Yeah, the car sounds really good, but just listen to it. I'm going to go to manual shifting this right now. Here we go. Oh, yes. This sounds nothing, listen to it, listen to the downshifts, it sounds nothing like your average run-of-the-mill American sports car. It sounds like a European monster when you drive the Z06. And you can see the smile on my face. I've been waiting to drive this car now for years. And oh man, am I enjoying it. I just love everything about the way this car handles. The handling is so incredibly tight. And you would never, if you were just in this car and you got transported here as an alien, you would never believe that this is the typical American sports car in the Corvette. All the other generations before this one, they don't really feel at all like this one. They don't sound at all like this one. Listen to it again. Oh man. Woo, this thing is awesome. Now I'm sitting here listening to this beautiful engine as it just goes crazy behind me. But one of the very first things I noticed about driving this car, obviously it's way smaller than a Challenger, but just how well this thing corners and how well it handles. I mean, it is like absolutely being on rails as I turn in. Oh man, it's such a different driving experience than the Challenger, and they're both satisfying in their own way. Just running around on the streets, this car will absolutely put a massive, massive smile on your face because there's just so much engagement with all the sound and the handling and just everything about this car. By the way, you can actually pop this roof off there as well. It's another thing I love about the Corvettes is even when you don't get it convertible, you can go ahead and take the top off of it and store it in the back. But anyway, I want to go ahead and wind this thing out just a little bit. As I mentioned, like 8,500 RPMs is what this flat plane crank V8 will do. Just take a listen. Oh my goodness. Wow. A couple other key things with this car that I really love. I love the heads-up display that Chevy does. I remember all my old Corvettes had heads-up display as well, and it's only gotten better and better. I'm looking at a beautiful hologram in front of me, and it's telling me exactly how fast I'm going, my RPMs, all that kind of stuff. I don't even have to look down. I think that is really cool, and the magnetic ride in this car is really good. I mean, you can really feel this car clawing at the road with those 345s back there, those big old wide tires that come on the Z06, and it just works, especially on the road. I can imagine taking this thing out on a road course, how much fun it would be. Listen to the downshift. Oh yeah. The brakes on this car are actually really good as well. I can't really find anything about this car that I don't like. I think it looks good. I think it sounds good. It drives absolutely fantastic. Some people say it is short on torque, and yes, I realize a 5.5 liter flat plane crank V8 is not going to make absolute gobs of torque like the Demon is. It's designed for a completely different purpose. Everything about this car just screams, drive the hell out of me. This never gets old. Driving a car like this never gets old. So this car absolutely lived up to all of my expectations, finally getting to drive it. A huge shout out to my buddies at Stingray Chevrolet in Plant City because I am smiling ear to ear. I can't stop smiling. I knew I would if I finally got to drive a car like this, and I absolutely did. This car is for sale right now, by the way, and man, what a fantastic machine. I am now aboard my Demon 170, and I will freely admit, sitting in this car feels nothing like sitting in that C8 Z06. It's just such an interesting comparison because that car literally feels like you're sitting in a fighter jet. The car wraps around you completely. I mean, just point and go steering. That engine sitting behind you, you can really hear that thing rev out, and it's such a visceral driving experience in that car. It is a true driver's car. This car, by comparison, feels like a big floaty couch, if you will. I mean, it's so much more roomy. Yes, it is driver-centric like the Corvette, but there's so much more room around you. There's more room here. There's more room everywhere. After all, this is a much bigger car. You saw the comparison. But when it comes to power, this is a very purpose-built machine, right? I mean, I feel like the Z06 on the street, it's perfect, right? I mean, it's got just the right amount of usable power to not be sketchy. It's got those big wide tires on the back. The way it makes the power, it's very predictable, right? Being naturally aspirated, you really have to wind out to get the full power band in that car. On this car, it's got that massive 3-liter IHI supercharger sitting right under the hood. I mean, just the supercharger alone is a full liter in displacement bigger than my Kia engine. It's just incredible to think about how much power is under the hood. 1,025 horsepower, 945 pound-feet of torque, and it makes it incredibly fast. So in a straight line, this car is literally violent. And it makes so much power, it's really not usable on the street. Only a portion of the power is usable on the street, even with those big old Mickey Thompson drag radials on the back. So you can see it's such an apples to orange comparison between these cars. So at the end of the day, do you prefer something that is a road course warrior that's a little more usable on the street, that sounds fantastic, very visceral driving experience in both of these cars, or do you want the big sledgehammer, torque monster, super loud, in your face, like I've got more power than you know what to do with type attitude? I mean, it's just, that's what these two cars are. Apples and oranges, but they're both huge smile machines, and that's what I love about them. So did I make a mistake by not going with the Z06 and going with the Demon 170 instead? Well, no. I absolutely love my Demon 170, and yeah, maybe it's a one-trick pony. I get that. That's the argument people make. But driving it around on the street, I still have a really good time with it. It is incredibly fast on the highway. It's even faster on a prep track. I mean, 0 to 60 in 1.7, I have already been that fast, and I've already done a 29-foot wheelie in this car. What other production car can you do wild crap like that? I mean, so to answer the question, I love the Z06. I would love to have one. It's such a fantastic car. I love everything about it. I can't find a lot to say negative about the Z06. But I'm still very, very happy with my Demon 170, and I can't wait to get it back out to the track here very, very soon. Well, guys, that about does it for my comparison of the Demon 170 and the C8 Z06, two completely different cars. They literally could not be any more different, basically in every single way, except for price point, which is really my whole reason for doing this comparison. If you have that amount of money sitting around, say it's 120 or whatever, like I said, we're not talking about markups today, but basically from a base price perspective, which car would you guys pick to drive? Would you rather have a 170 or would you rather have a C8 Z06? They are both absolutely fantastic. They're smile machines. I love them both. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and I will catch you on the next one. So until then, Racer X.